Hi, I'm Claire Milliken and welcome to Art This Week. In this week's episode, we continue our New York-based coverage. Here we visit the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts studio of Scott Teplin. Teplin is a New York-based artist represented by Adam Baumgold Gallery in New York. Now for Art This Week.
Scott, tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now, and this is a new project here.
Well, this drawing is part of a larger series of, plane, train, and car crash drawings that I collage together and then redraw large in watercolor. They start as sketches in a sketchbook, and then I redraw them on larger pieces of paper, and then I refine each stage of the drawing gets refined into something that I want to move toward, and eventually I'll come up with a single line drawing that I'll project into a large piece of paper, and then I'll just start. I'll come up with a color theme, and I'll just start working on it with watercolor until it sort of pops out.
So it goes through several different phases.
Yeah, it takes a while to get to this point.
And how do you know when? Because I know that a lot of artists have a hard time knowing when they're done with a piece. How do you know when you're done with a piece?
Partly when I get totally sick of it and I can't stand looking at it anymore, and partly when I just really want to work on something else, and also when I've pushed, with this series is when I push the darks as far as the darks can go, and I don't want to start messing up with the lights because I want as much value as possible, and then I just start leaving it alone.
So this piece is going to, do you have an idea of how it's going to end?
I'm going to start putting some a background of like a snowy landscape behind it, sort of an idea, not exactly rendered snowy landscape, but just sort of like lines of light, color ascending. What I've been doing with this is I took a photo of it, and then I selected the image in Photoshop, and I took that image, and then I have separate small watercolor vignettes of possible backgrounds, and I've been pasting it over those watercolor samples to see what might work well before I start on the large one, so I don't screw this one up.
I always find it interesting, when you're working and you're talking about a piece that's something like this and as complicated as this, so when, to know when you first knew that, you wanted to be an artist, or when you first created, what was the first thing that you ever created? I always wonder.
Well, I guess I started making art before I knew I was making art, when I was supposed to be, I must have been 9 years old or something. When I was in my room, I was supposed to be doing homework, but I wasn't doing homework. I was just finding other things to do, like I used to take fireworks apart and then reconfigure them into new fireworks. I would like slice them open with, I had little blade, like X-Acto knives in my room, and I would slice them open and then recombine the contents of one into another, and then I do a lot of kind of stuff that my parents didn't necessarily know. They still don't know that I did that. Yeah, it was a lot of my creativity came out when I was supposed to be doing other things like homework. And then I didn't take any art classes all through high school, and then in college I went to Europe for the year, and I took a watercolor class in Florence. I was living in Florence, and I just fell in love with it, and I always wanted to do it, and I've done it ever since. I went to college at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I got a BS in art, and then I went on, and then I moved to New York, and then realized it's really hard living in New York as an artist, so I chickened out, and I escaped to graduate school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and then I came back to New York again because I figured this is really where I have to be if I want to try to be an artist professionally.
And tell me about this piece. This is again like the other, a lot of like car wreck.
So I knew this was finished because I couldn't get any darker in the darks, and I didn't want to get any. I didn't want to mess with the lights anymore. And I guess one reason I like to draw as opposed to I guess I consider these drawings as opposed to like painting with oil or even printmaking, which is what I studied in school, is I get to make something, look at it, and then quickly make something else right after it. And so if you remember the last piece you just looked at didn't have these black lines, they were just the color. You can see light pencil on the earlier piece because I haven't finished with the watercolor yet, but that'll disappear over time. And I wanted to, I just like to try something different every time. Like as I'm making a piece, I think to myself, what would it be like if I did this instead, if I eliminated the black lines and kept some of the background? And so I can, if I draw, I can quickly, start a new one and just try that right away. And I'm always, that's kind of what drives me to go to the next piece, the next piece, the next piece, just to see what would happen if I did something else. It's kind of like always experimenting. And so that's why this one looks a little different than the other one.
Always an exchange with your art. You take this, give there, move
yeah,
this. And,
yeah. I guess I'm always curious about what will happen if I try something new, and the only way I'm going to find out is if I do it, and then that will always bring up more questions, and I can just keep going and going and going and going.
It almost is like a three-dimensional because of the faded and the different color in the background, and this just seems like it's coming right at you.
Yeah, that's sort of the point of the color value changes. The dark can kind of recede into space, and the light can kind of pop out at you a little bit.
So how did your work change from when you lived elsewhere and then started working here in New York, and just the city itself, and just working at the Elizabeth Foundation?
Oh, I don't know if, I don't know if New York City changed it so much as it accelerated the making of it. It just, because when I first moved here, out of college, I started hanging out with book artists, and that's all I did pretty much was book arts. I would make one-of-a-kind artist books and collaborated with other artists. So that's actually one thing I started doing that I didn't do before, was collaboration with other artists. Over time, I just started making books on my own and then going off and just doing all my own work, like this stuff. But I wasn't able to make large work until I moved to the Elizabeth Foundation because I didn't have the space for it. I was always working out of my apartment. And so that was kind of nice because I have big walls to work on and I can work larger. Another nice thing about being here at the EFA is you're surrounded by artists all the time, and they're all professional artists. They're not, they're great resources, they're good connections, they're good for networking, it's good for inspiration.
Right.
Yeah, people who have studios here are really lucky, I think. I'm really lucky to have a studio here.
We want to thank Scott for speaking with us. More information on him can be found at Teplin.com. More information on the Adam Baumgall Gallery can be found at adambaumgallgallery.com. We also want to thank the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts for allowing us to film there. You can find them at efanyc.org. We would like to thank Valley House Gallery for allowing us to film in the gardens. They can be found at valleyhouse.com. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
I still got your post